Mission.
I'll admit something, I never played much in the way of SNK's games as a kid. They always fascinated me ever since I heard about them via Nintendo Power, Game Informer, and G4 TV. I remember playing one of their fighting games in an arcade in junior high, but until recent memory as an adult when I started buying their games, mostly in compilations, that was it. By comparison, I grew up more with their rivals at Capcom, and even there, as a younger kid, I only barely grazed upon Street Fighter on my cousin's Sega Genesis or Mega Drive, as well as their Super Nintendo until I was in high school when I would play one of the variations of Street Fighter 2 on the Nintendo Wii Virtual Console. Besides that, the Capcom works I and my siblings grew up with were Mega Man, be it games ranging from Mega Man Anniversary Collection, Mega Man and Bass, and Battleship Challenge, to the anime based on the EXE series called NT Warrior, and we were of course fond of their joint ventures with Nintendo on their Legend of Zelda series. Hell, I even loved me some Beautiful Joe and would play some of the mature stuff as an adult as well. But what really fascinated me is the rivalry between the two, and I remember seeing in-game magazines in my middle school's library, which are between Nintendo Power and Game Informer, that there was a crossover game called Capcom vs. SNK 2. As of this time, I have never played it. But what I would finally get is a re-release of their first ever crossover fighter, SNK vs. Capcom Match of the Millennium, which was not an arcade game, but a handheld game for the Neo Geo Pocket Color. Again, I never owned that hardware as I was a Game Boy kid, but have purchased on the Nintendo Switch, and later, the PC. Given Capcom's history with crossovers, mostly against superheroes from the West, East, and a little in between, how does this first fighting game romp fare for SNK and Capcom? Let's find out. Not much you need to know about the story, as it involves a tournament set up by lead villains Geese Howard and M. Bison, who have either cloned or kidnapped top fighters into their own game and plan to do so with any characters you play, and that's it. Nothing more to add on it, simple, but it works. As I mentioned, the gameplay of Match of the Millennium is a fighting game tailor-made for a handheld, particularly the Neo Geo Pocket Color. Again, I never owned one myself growing up, but unlike, say, the Game Boy, the Neo Geo Pocket Color uses a joystick that makes clicking sounds whenever you use it. An experience that, for SNK hardcores, will likely be missed if played on anything else but an NGPC. But for anyone who has played it for the first time on other systems, like for me, it was Switch first, then the PC, it was something to live with. And of course, as with the Game Boy, there were only 2 face buttons, but despite that, SNK still manages to develop a very well-designed fighter around these limits without any porting down whatsoever. And even on modern hardware, the game feels fantastic to play with an analog stick, even without the clicking feature. Blasting out a Hadouken never felt more satisfying in something not arcade or console hardware. The game itself is packed, with 26 characters in total, 13 for each of the 2 companies, several of which to unlock through replaying the game several times, at least on the Steam and Switch versions, as it was apparently harder on the original hardware. But alongside the standard arcade or tourney modes, there's an Olympic mode where you'll not only get a few extra fighting modes with different rule sets, you'll also get some mini-games dedicated to other games in SNK and Capcom's respective portfolios, like a platform jumper with Arthur from Ghosts and Goblins, a light gun-esque game with a Metal Slug theme, a sword-cutting minigame, or even a dancing minigame, which are neat distractions, but nothing compares to the actual fighting of the fighting game. Hell, Tourney Mode alone provides a ton of reason to replay, with having 3 sub-modes, such as a single run, a 2-fighter team, or a 3-fighter team. And it's even fun to notice some dialogue changes or small touches like animations or dialogue only certain characters have with one another. One thing to note though is that on normal difficulty, the AI on the final boss can get really cheap, as I learned the hard way that SNK games are notorious for cheap final bosses that would make any other fighting game boss look easy. Yes, I mean him. And her too. But thankfully, as with most other video games, you can set the difficulty down if you don't want to be swearing like a sailor. And personally, I find that several fights can still be entertaining enough on easy difficulty, as the AI still at least tries to put up a fight, at least in the later rounds, as you will see some special moves being performed. But as for other aspects of the game, let me start with the graphics, and for an 8-bit system, SNK designed some beautiful stages, many of them being recreations of past SNK and Capcom games, and even deformed the characters look like they do if they weren't, with the only compromise being the color palette on the sprites during gameplay, but that's okay. And while we're on the subject of 8-bit, the sound is great too, with the remixes of character themes from games past being translated to a lower technology. And with this re-release, there are some extras I want to talk about, and that should at least pique an interest, especially to SNK enthusiasts. The re-release by Code Mystics has a digital manual preserved, and it gives you options to want to display with the grain or even play with the image of varying versions of the Pocket Color. And yes, you can play multiplayer, and one thing cool about it is that you don't have to worry about owning multiple hardware, as there is a split screen if you have the same console. Sadly though, there is no online for either re-release, but Steam owners have a bit of an advantage as there is a way to emulate it using Steam's remote play function, allowing it to stream to the second player. Still though, nothing beats owning the game. Overall, SNK vs. Capcom, Match of the Millennium, is a fantastic crossover fighter that not only proves that handhelds have a place for fighting games, be it an original game or even a port, it also serves as a celebration of two legends in the fighting game genre. Thankfully, even though it's been years since their last crossover game, SBC Chaos, the two would still join forces in other developers' games such as Namco Bandai's Tekken 7 and Nintendo's Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. Alongside those and this re-release, it's clear SNK and Capcom want to work together again in full.